Alright everybody, it's our Klaus here, and I've got a really amazing video for you today. I'm going to be discussing the band, the Mars Volta, a truly excellent band, but their connections to some very ominous concepts, looking ahead into the year 2017 here. And so, do note that the band had a span of 11 years, the master number of evil in many regards. But we'll be talking about El Paso, Texas, of course, the nickname of the Sun City going along with that a little later on here. But something I want you to keep in mind, looking at the word Volta, is that it is defined as a rhetorical shift or dramatic change in thought and or emotion. So a turn, right, in some sort of way. And I want you to keep that in mind as we're looking ahead at these various dates in 2017 here, as well as the concepts that will be accompanying them and what they have to do with overturning the current limitations and dogmas and overall restrictions that we have on this plane of existence. So notice here, for the Mars Volta, the Jewish value is the same as law and order and Zesty. So we'll pull those aside for a second and look at the numbers written out down below, 584. Now, on the right side of your screen, you can see that is the same Jewish value as Luciferian Mason, as well as the phrase on the ground, which were the last words spoken by Charles Dickens on his deathbed. So, of course, you can look up top there. I have discussed him a lot in the past, so be sure to go back and familiarize yourself. But notice as well references to the King of the Snakes, the Doctrine of Lies, and Four of Coins. Now, looking in the Thoth Tarot deck, this is referred to as the Power card or the Four of Discs. Now, I want you to note some things here. This is off of page 213, and it reads, "The card is ruled by the sun in Capricornus, the sign in which he is reborn." And so notice, of course, at the top of this card, we do have in the middle of this pyramid here the sign of the sun, what others would say is the sign of Saturn, right in the middle there. Of course, Capricornus being ruled by Saturn, very interesting connections there, of course, going into the Lucifer and Pan connotations, time, restriction, all of those ideas. But furthermore, the card says the discs are very large and solid. The suggestion of the card is that of a fortress. This represents law and order maintained by constant authority and vigilance. So that phrase, law and order, coming up in this card is very interesting to me. Again, it has been a keystone concept that we've looked at throughout this research here. You do see law and order written out behind Rance Stoddard here in Liberty Valance, as well as remembering that Trump was always positing himself as the law and order candidate. Do you remember in his acceptance speech for the Republican nomination, he mentioned law and order 4 times, of course that being referential towards the Emperor card, again, government, limitation, those sorts of things. But the speech itself was also 115 minutes. Of course, 115 is the same values as law and order, and I'll talk more about that number later and the immense importance that it has towards everything. But so now, notice as well here, since we're on these images, Zesty's is the shop that appears in the back of a number of very compelling assassination representations from The Simpsons here. Again, this is from the 144th episode. Again, the connections there to Scarlet Woman, but of The Simpsons, in which Lisa is getting ready to expose that the town's founder, Jebediah, is nothing more than a lying, bloodthirsty pirate and founded everything on deception. Of course, here with this shot, but you do notice Zesty's in the back there. All of these strikingly similar scenes, again, with Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, in which Tom Donovan, John Wayne's character, who also has a value of 115, is seen here to be shooting at Liberty, and of course all of the connotations we've discussed in the past there. Notice Zesty's in the back of the new intro of The Simpsons. All of the ice cream information we've talked about as being an allegory for this impending assassination. Of course, Jebediah Springfield having the same values as Barack Hussein Obama is very interesting because it is his head who gets the ice cream in it, while Ralph Wiggum is the one who more often represents Trump. So a lot of interesting information to keep in mind with all of this imagery. And I want you to see here in this image from episode 441, the inversion there of that ever critical 144, You have the headstone of Ralph Wiggum, him dying at 11 years of age, again in 2017. Very interesting there with the decapitated head of Jebediah on the ground. Remember all of the information regarding the Pez theory, how the original logo was made out of 44 bricks, right? Thinking to all these masonry concepts. But again, the immense importance that is most certainly tied with all of that. Now, I want you to see that all of these, a natural woman as well as Kiss Love Gun here, these have the same English and simple values as the Mars Volta, alright? So immensely connecting it to Zesty's, Law and Order, all of those things that we're discussing there. But Kiss Love Gun has these same numbers, and I want you to remember the 11 women on the bottom here, of course referencing the lust card, which we've talked about immensely, but the Scarlet Woman, the connections there will come up later today. But the 4 members of Kiss here, again 11 and 4 gives us that nice 15 devil representation again. You do have the 2 towers, you can also see that as an 11, the Sun, the Saturn representation. Again, it really is never ending. But I also want you to see that these same numbers here, English and simple values for the Mars Volta, come up with the Law of Thelema, as well as the Antichrist, Lord of the Flies, many other things. But of course, for those of you not familiar, this whole concept of do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, and love is the law, love under will, connected with Crowley. Take a look at these numbers. They'll come up again immensely throughout this presentation. But jumping back here, you can also see references to Queen of Babylon, Restoration, America the Babylon, I Am the Great Beast, Evil Billionaire, and the Second Coming. Now, let's think back here to up top where we saw Isaiah 13:5. I want you to know that Isaiah has the same value as the word death. And if we look at it as I being the 9th letter, and it being a 6-letter word, add those together and we get the number 15. Again, a reference to the Devil Tarot card. Now, verse 13:5 is very important because this year, May 15th, will be the 135th day. And do remember that 515 is the divine apocalyptic number from Dante's Divine Comedy, and that will come up later on in this presentation. But I do want you to keep in mind as well that that 135 is the same as Thelemic order, as well as terrorism, Ralph Wiggum, Black in the Sun, God of Baphomet, stock exchange, some very important concepts that we've discussed in the past here. But I do want to keep moving because there's so much to cover. So look back to the left side of your screen. You can see if we take 135, mirror, and add it with itself there, it does give us 666, which again, since we're talking about this right now, I guess we'll just pull up this 216 that comes up later, and do notice that it is the same as 510 and 5, otherwise as 515. But these references to begin apocalypse event, the aeon of adjustment, and so forth are very important to bear in mind. Now look back here and let's actually take a look at the excerpt from Isaiah 13:5 here. You see it's from a judgment against Babylon, and it reads, "They are coming from a far country, from the farthest horizons, the Lord and his instruments of indignation, to destroy the whole land." And so that's very, very compelling with all of the things that we've discussed with that number. And again, you can see more of it on the right side of your screen there. But let's keep moving. So a judgment against Babylon. If we pull it up here, we can get all sorts of interesting things out of it. Most notably, though, I just do want to show you that if we take the initials from all of those words and reduce them down, we can get this 222, which is the same as Ransom Rance Stoddard. Yes, that's Mr. Law and Order, as well as Jesus fucking Christ, True Holy Angel of Death, Impossible Coincidences, and Walter Leland Cronkite. So all very compelling to see come up with that. But so take a look back over here, though. A judgment against Babylon gives us the Antichrist 666, as well as the number 195. Now 195 comes up as love trumps hate, which is very interesting because of course that was the sign that Lady Gaga, who does have the same values as Tom Donovan, again that is the man who actually shoots Liberty Valance, they have the same values. She was holding this sign outside of his, after he was announced president, but with the love trumps hate. You can see all of that. Of course, these references to 777, first-degree murder, Donald Trump blackened military complex, Washington State, again, the 42nd state. Just like Dust Devils, the 42nd chapter has that simple value of 135. It's all very compelling. You can see on the right side here, I've got quite a bit of information for you, again, even from this last presentation I just did, discussing this concept of Washington 7. So a lot to really bear in mind with that. But so back to the left side of your screen here, I do want you to see the ES values are the same as Kushner properties. Now, why this strikes me as so interesting is we had discussed Kushner properties owning 666 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, New York. Now, this is where the cartoon history of the universe was published, and again, I've talked about that at length in the past here, but I want you to see that if we look at the zip code there, that 10, 10, 3, and drop those zeros, those silence numbers there, we do have that 113, the simple value there being apocalypse, as well as Neron Caesar, Universe, Abomination Trumpet, of course Salvatore, the big piece that I had been doing the research on there. And I also just want you to see, of course, all of those fascinating connections. Let me pull it back to the last one there so you can see the most recent set of information. But getting back here, you do see conspiracy theorist as well as surprise nuclear attack and harmonic 33. Of course, the number 33, very important. I do want to just jump back here and pull up this Kushner properties for you so you can see a little more of the coding for that, and especially for 666 Fifth Avenue written out there, because I think it's really interesting to bear all of that in mind. But so let's jump back here, and I want to get in talking about, we'll go more into 33 here in just a second here, but the album Amputecture from the Mars Volta. So if we take a look here, you'll notice that it was the third album they put out back in 2006, and so some interesting release dates for it. Do notice that in Europe it was released on 9/11, and so of course all the interesting connections there. And with the recent research we've been doing as well, remember that Full Metal Jacket also came out on 9/11 19 years prior in 1987, but so the release date there for the international is September 12th. So if we look at that as 9/12, we're actually right back where we started in this video with the Charles Dickens information. So let me pull him back up here for you. And do notice that his publisher, Bradbury and Evans, has that English value of 9/12, which is also the same as Full Metal Jacket, which, as I described, 19 years prior, being released on the same date in Europe. Of course, 19 being the Sun card, incredibly important, the Path of Resh. You also see, of course, the references to the Path of Teth, the number 36, which is in fact the unit that Truman lives in the Truman Show. That 36 number is, the triangular number is 666. All of these critical things to keep in mind here, but so let's keep going. I want to show you here the image for Amputecture. So you can see this is the cover work here. We'll talk about the artist in a moment, but you do have this giant 52 here. 5 and 2, of course, giving us 7, the very dark number, which we'll talk about a little more later, as well as noting that there are 44 stripes going across this, not counting the darkened lines, but the lighter ones. So very interesting with the connections to 44. But so let's jump back here. And of course, 52 having the same value as devil, NWO, those sorts of things. Notice that 31 comes up for Amputecture here, and 31, of course, being the sacred number in the Book of the Law, the most hidden number that they say for it, so very important to keep in mind, as well as 93 coming up, and the master thelemic number there. It's also interesting to note that 31 times 3 gives us 93. Again, thinking about these Trinity concepts, being very critical here. But of course, just connecting it back to the ice cream, thinking about the Baskin-Robbins bit that I've told you. But let's keep going here. I want you to see end of days eclipse is written out. And so we do have the one coming up here, big solar eclipse on August 21st, which will be the 233rd day. So I just want you to see that that is the same values as enthroned Washington for a simple value there. So it's also the same as MK Ultra mind control and a number of other just very critical things, the Christ conspiracy, 2018, as well as Sodom's destruction, Horus, the all-seeing eye, again just thinking back to our power card earlier. But so it's also interesting to note that that 132, the number of days that'll be remaining there, is going to come up later on in this presentation in regards to the Baphomets, track 7 off of Amputecture, the day of the Baphomets. But so we'll get to that in a bit here, but you will see that 132 is the same as Kill Trump. There we have our 135 again, as well as the Rapture. All sorts of interesting things. But so let's get back here and notice that if we want to look at these when they're mirrored, February 2nd is going to be the 33rd day of this year. And so, of course, very interesting because the second month, second day, that 22, 33, 55, all of those concepts. But notice as well that 332 days will be remaining that day. So 332 can be summed up as blood sacrifice, having those same codings. But notice as well here, and again, just thinking about all of these 33s and the numbers here, 31, 93. If we subtract 31 from 93, we get 62. The 62nd day of this year is going to be March 3rd, so there's your 33 again, with 303 days remaining. So a little overwhelming, but you do see, right, that chapter 33 from the Book of Lies is Baphomet here. I want you to see as well the striking resemblance that the enthroned Washington statue has, again with that 233 value on it. This was constructed, or debuted when Eliphas Levi, the man who created this image, turned 22, the master builder number. And so again, just supremely interesting to consider all of that information there. But so a lot of interesting stuff with that date. But let's keep moving here. Reference to the King has returned in the Lost Tarot card. Now, notice down below here the ES values, reference to love is the law. Now, again, we can just draw this right back to our image here, summing all of these phrases up with the law of Thelema. But a lot to just keep in mind there. Let's keep going though, because I want you to also see man bearing water, angel of darkness, rosy cross, as well as building a world, USA president, the Lord of evil, references to let freedom ring and justice for all. And so, of course, interesting to me as well, just thinking back to Law and Order and Rance here, and he's got the bell on his desk. Of course, we've discussed all this Athenium with George Washington here. It is central to Pez theory. The Athenium is in this episode as well. And again, it's really an endless set of fascinating information, but let's keep moving here with it though. Big Mutant is the name of this painting that appears on the Mars Volta cover here. It's by artist Jeff Jordan, who we'll talk about in a moment. But notice for Big Mutant, you have reference to the occult, as well as the double one, demonic spirit from Lucifer, the hidden master. You have as well as the idea of reptilian aliens, as well as serial sniper, true act, and nuclear. Now, what's so interesting about true act coming up is that if we look at the ES values here, they are the same as bullet catch. Remember this whole bit that David Blaine is going to be doing and all of the misrepresentation that we've seen with that. But so notice as well that Big Mutant here is the same ES as Day of Be With Us. Of course, this was discussed in the previous video as an apocalyptic date of everything being cleansed and brought back to balance. But notice as well that it is the same as 515, the number given from Dante's Divine Comedy in the Purgatory book about the apocalypse and when this creature would return. But notice as well, this connects here to statehood and liberty valance. because this is when John Wayne is getting ready to tell Rance the truth about how things really took place that night, and that he was the one who killed him. But again, all of the deceit is a very fascinating story. But let's keep going here. Notice you have reference to the number 20. Remember, the 20th tarot card is the Aeon card, and again, this whole idea of bringing everything to a cataclysmic head. You also have Holy Grail, earthquake, solar flare, shooting, as well as suicide seal, bloodlines, the cross, military, the Messiah, and Disneyland. And so, of course, Disneyland, always just interesting to keep in mind with everything here, the massive role that they play. Do notice, of course, they are on a 33rd coordinate there with the 1117, or excuse me, yeah, for the other one. Founded in 1955, July 17th, and so if we reduce 17, 1 and 7 is 8, 8 and 7, the 7th month there gives us that nice 15, and so the Devil card pops up yet again. But notice as well, just the address here, the 1313 Disneyland Resort, the double 13, all the things we've talked about in the past with that, alright, but now let's keep moving here, because it just gets more interesting. Notice Jeff Jordan, this is the artist who created the image for that. His Jewish value is the same as in 100 and 50 and 6. And so what's also interesting about that value of 1392 is that it is the same English value as I am the law and order candidate, and so it's also the same as the Pilgrim Society, as well as the District of Columbia and Brotherhood of the Snake, Annihilation of Earth. All these phenomenally interesting ideas coming up in that value there. But notice as well here that you have references to Stained with Blood, the Ancient Builders of Reality. And before I get too far ahead here, let's pull up, again, this is from the Book of Lies here, but it's discussing, this is actually an excerpt from Book of Thoth, the Our Lady Babylon, and it's discussing her numbers being 100 and 50 and 6, and of course this coming up as well as the Scarlet Woman and all of the information that I've shown you in connection with that. But so do notice here, we'll look at an actual, here's the seal of Babylon as it appears, of course with the 7 points on it there, and if we were to actually go back and read this a bit, you can see that 7 is the number of most everything surrounding this card, including the number of streams of the blood of the 7 spirits of God. 7 are the heads of the beast whereon she rideth. And again, it just goes on in this vein, but that number in 150 and 6. And remember everything we discussed with this in my previous videos on Planet Trump and so forth, and now it has that 156 reference, but you can get a much deeper read on that. But notice as well that Jeff Jordan is the same as full wolf moon, which is actually the full moon going on tonight, January 12th. And so what I want you to see here as well, that was really interesting to me, is that this year, with all of the moons, 7 of them happen to be 4 letters each, right? Full and moon are 4 letters. So to have words with 4 letters in between is also very interesting, but there's 7 of them. And so again, a lot that we could say with that, but I want to keep moving here. And note that you also have world peace and no America. Now notice for the ES value here, references to end times, virus, god of war, secrets, all sorts of very interesting ideas. Now let's go down below here and look at El Paso, Texas, because as I noted earlier, this was the place, and again this is the Pilgrim Society logo, hic at UB, here and everywhere, done a lot of research on that for you. But in any case, to El Paso, Texas here, you notice for both Cedric and Omar, it is listed as their origin place, although they are born in different locations, being California and Puerto Rico, respectively there. And so it's interesting that that comes up like that. But so now notice here that El Paso, Texas is 11 letters, and so there we have our nice lust card again. But notice as well that is the same values as my channel name. We could also break this down as 7 times 22 equals 154, which that brings us back to the beginning of the video with the Mars Volta, the Law of Thelema, the Antichrist, all of those things that we were talking about here. But so notice as well you have Egyptian magician, as well as the Messiah of Darkness, unkillable monster, lots of interesting things. The ES values, same as Washington, D.C., as well as Eye of Horus, the Path of Death, encrypted code, Church of Satan, Great Pyramid, all of these bits. Do remember in my last video I was discussing that on the seal of the District of Columbia here, remember, which just came up a while ago, you do have this nice ring being held in the middle here. The 15th letter can invert that as 51 because District of Columbia just did win the vote to become the 51st state. And of course all of the 7s that I counted out for you in the previous video as well. But so looking at their flag, 3 stars, 5 points, 3 times 5, 15. Can also be the very sacred 555. Tilting the flag, you can get a nice 11 out of there. It's really an endless amount of connections with Washington, D.C. on this as well. You have Eye of Horus here, which again, we could look back here and reference that in the center here, overlooking things. But notice as well, mind control. And again, I just read through all of those. Great Pyramid, so forth. The area codes for El Paso, Texas, we have 915 and 575. So I want to point out the 575 because it's a mirrored number, but because it has a Jewish value that's the same as the bullet catch. So you have this coming back again and again. Notice it all falls into place. False prophets, human sacrifices. The number 109 is written out here. And so what I want you to see that's just really interesting, and remember how we tied in love trumps hate with all of this earlier, but if you actually look on the front of this rig that Lady Gaga is standing on, there is the number 109 written in the corner right here. You also have this nice FF66, also 29 right here, number of bones in the human skull. 2 and 9 gives us 11, our lust card. 11 and 66 gives us 77. Truly critical and powerful numbers that come into play there. But again, seeing how that all ties into place. Now notice back here on the left side of your screen that if we take those 2 area codes for El Paso, Texas, add them together, we get the number 1490. So if we drop the 0 on that, it becomes the number 149, which again is very interesting because it is the same as Skull and Bones, as well as Dallas Trade Mart, again where Kennedy was heading when he was assassinated. But it's also the same as Liberty Valance. This is the man who's shot in that film, in that story. You also see it's the same as David Copperfield, who is surprisingly, I feel, one of the most wealthy entertainers in the world. You have God of all things. And again, this number 29 pops up here, which I just showed you on the front of that Lady Gaga sanitation vehicle. And again, if you wanted to even see the information that we put forward on that, you can see how it comes up with the Master Builder, as well as Pilgrim Society, Signs of Deception, 444. Again, why I was pointing out those full moons that were coming up that have that 444 value in them is its connection with the Order of Thelema. Again, if we were to actually just look into those numbers on their own, you can see it written right out like that, as well as head mind control and dualisms. If it's an English value, you have Jesus, Lucifer, Masonic, occult, all sorts of things. The king, ruler, anti-peace. Okay, could go on and on with it. But now back to the left side of the screen here, thinking about all of those connections that we have. 1 + 4 + 9 can also be 15. Yet another reference to the Devil Tarot card. Now notice here for El Paso, Texas, and you can easily research all of this, and do notice the coordinate of 31 there. popping up, very critical, nickname of the Sun City. So pulling that up here, you do have reference to 13 Illuminati families, as well as Donald Trump, Roasted Black, The Grove, Elenin, Destiny. But notice here, what's truly critical is here's where we get our big English simple value of 864 and 144. So these are the same values now as Scarlet Woman, as Trauma Room 1. This is where Kennedy was pronounced dead. Dallas Love Field is where he was heading from when he was going to the Dallas Trade Mart, which again I did just note came up in the coding there. But so notice as well here, I do want to just pull up on the right side of your screen more of the Scarlet Woman coding and Planet Trump and then 156, all of these things, so you'll be able to stop and pause somewhere in this video and see. And again with this and 156, 156, the 666, the 33, as above, so below. All of these just, again, fundamental, huge pieces here. But do notice with this 144, all of my notes here that tie this in with the Iconoclast episode, the Zesty's clip, as well as Tom Donovan, Lady Gaga, the episode earlier where I showed you the decapitated head and Ralph's tombstone. 441 is also the link to the song Salvatore. Notice here, Mark of the Beast, the number 44, the secret key, satanic hexagram. You have reference to Great Harvest and Six of Hearts. Remember, this is the trick that Blaine was trying to perform and messed up trying to get this card right, quote unquote, messed up. But again, the reference is there that would have to an assassination on him or Trump, as Trump arguably serves as the inversion of him. Again, something that I could show you with these images here. Thinking back to 2008, the dive of death, and how this connected with the stock market crash of that same year. But again, just this supreme inversion of the two right there is really just over the top to keep in mind, thinking about. But I also want you to see here that we have written out the number 170, and so that is the same as World War III spelled out. And so let's pull that up as the simple value for you here. And go all the way to the back. Alright, so you have it right here, World War III, as well as the Church of Satan, gun confiscation, HAARP, earthquakes, as well as the number 74, which is the simple value for the 444. So very interesting to keep all of that in mind. But notice as well here that we get the number 71, again the inverted star 17 number there, but that does come up with things such as Hidden Hand and Timur, as well as fucking, Apollo, Babylon. All of these, again, just very critical concepts. You see, it's also the same as Schism, which was released on January 15th. Again, this whole idea of 3 days after a full moon and all of the information that we've tied in with that. But I think I'll have an opportunity here in just a moment to really expand on that for you. But I also want you to see that 71 does come up with this idea of Timur as well, I believe. So let me type this in. To make sure first. So yes, that is the same, and that did come up back in this Sade video. Again, it's what she's writing on the window at the end. It's translated as fear, and so again, very troubling that that comes up. Now let's get into track 7 here off of Amputexture. It's a song called Day of the Baphomets, and I want you to know, just for the whole album here, there's definitely a lot of strong religious themes. Of course, number 2 even being named Tetragrammaton, and we'll come back to that at the end here if we have time for a little more reiteration for you. But notice here, track 7 is Day of the Baphomets, and of course everything that we were talking about earlier with that number, the immense significance that it carries for it. But so notice here now, Jewish value for it, you have devil/dragon, as well as the number 56. So this does come up with the end, and do remember that this is not only how the Lisa the Iconoclast episode begins, but it is how the movie Man Who Shot Liberty Valance ends. And so very interesting, of course, these connections to the railroad that I've discussed at length in the past for you. But so now notice as well, you have reference to this number 1011. And I do want to point that out to you because that came up in Old Faithful Geyser in the previous video talking about Yellowstone. But one of the other things that comes up with that is 1 year delay. Again, with 2016 being listed as that day for the Yellowstone and everything I showed with that, the 1 year delay with that makes it troubling because obviously what are we heading towards now, right? The next year and all of these things that have been coming up for it. So I want you to see though that we can also invert that as 1110, which is the same as judgment / the star. Again, this is a 15 letter combination phrase here, and you can see that the judgment and the star card are the only two on this cover that are tilted. And again, as I discussed in that video, there's a very comprehensive secret reading to be had in there, but references to Donald John Trump, Book of Revelation, Secrets Kept Hidden. Again, a perfect illusion, mistaken for love. These are the hooks from that song, Perfect Illusion, from Lady Gaga. You also have 9 Years War, Lisa the Icon. I mean, it's a huge number here to be coming up, and we've seen it time and again. So now notice as well, we could do this as 11 times 10, and if we get 110, that's the same as the new aeon, and that's also the same as V, 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 V. Pretty sure I said it 5 times there, I'm hoping. But so in any case, that is how chapter 42 in Book of Lies, Dust Devils ends. And do remember everything with this 135 that we were discussing at the beginning of this video, connecting those numbers. So again, tremendously important information to keep in mind. Notice here, the English and simple values for day of the Baphomets, the same as the Trump train, Mother Monsters, Lady Gaga's nickname, all of these references to other dark ideas, order out of chaos, manifest destiny, the source of all evil. And here you see it, January 15th. And again, so many important things taking place on that day, a lot of deaths, and again, it will be that 115. I want to point out, and I guess give a shout out here as well to Sean Clayton, who views and comments on a number of these videos, but in response to one of his comments, it got me thinking more about the January 15th date, which I have been talking about for a while, but you can see here some more information that really connects this David Blaine bit and all of these attempts to shoot at himself with the .22 caliber rifle, again 2 times, and their 42-minute specials, all of the numbers that we can get out of that. It is quite fascinating. But notice as well here references to Obama's damaged right eye, economic meltdown, apocalyptic plans, the fabric of reality, and transformation. So really just a huge set of ideas there. And on the right side here, let's pull up the Trump train for you so that you can see more of the information that was surrounding that. And again, references to Brotherhood of Darkness, if we're looking at this 813, I mean, all sorts of things, right? I'm just going to leave it at that. Take a look at the notes here. You can also see New Columbia. I'll scroll up so you can see that Trump train has all of these connections. Again, infinitely interesting. Now, I did want to do just one variant on this, the day of the Baphomets, adding the in front of it. References to esoteric masonry, as well as the number 163. And so if we're looking at that, that is the same as the 7th seal, but it's also the same as, in here, let's go backwards to save time, Barack Hussein Obama, and again, Jebediah Springfield, as I noted earlier, Barack Obama head wound. Again, you can see all these ideas, desolate measure, Obama gets headshot, all of that sort of stuff popping up there. But so now notice as well references to Barack Hussein Obama is the beast, as well as the devil dragon, the simple truth behind it. Now the ES values here, let's bring us back to our whole idea of 216 and 510 and 5. Remember earlier I was talking about 6 times 6 times 6 is 216, and so you do have in Trump's victory speech for the presidency here from the Washington Post a clip that is 2 minutes 16 seconds, and down below here this phrase, a bloodbath, highlighted. So very interesting because a bloodbath has the value of 480, and so let me pull that up for you, because it has the same as Baphomet, the beast, sun god, tragedy. Wiggum, right? All of these critical things. Also the same as Ciao Amore, lyric from Salvatore. Massive, massive ideas here. So let's keep moving though. Santa's Little Helper, all those words are 6 letters. It's a nice 666. The initials SLH is 138. Do remember that 138. It's a huge value that I've talked about, but that does have the same values as, here you have it, Donald Trump, as well as Master Mason, number 7, behind the 11, great architect, Pez theory. Again, the immense importance of all of this, but keep going. Aeon of Adjustment, remember 8th card, number 31, all the things. So if we wanted to look at it in one last way here, the Baphomets, what it's the day of. And again, think back to my previous video when I was talking about the day of and how you can break it down. Let me pull it up on the right side for you here so you can see what the day of looks like. And again, these references to September 9th, 9/9, references to the 113 days remaining, all these sorts of interesting things. But you have references here to Alien Stargate, Nibiru Black Hole is the Angel of Death, and triple ones. The ES values down below, again, giving us this idea of kill Trump, as well as the Rapture, the Most High, hidden messages, justice be done, 1, 3, 5. Again, the number that is coming up the absolute most throughout today, May 15th this year. Do you remember all of the ideas that I was talking about in this previous video with that 5/15 day and its relation to June 3rd? I do want to have that up for you. The end. Alright, so I can't, sorry, I can't quite find it right now. I don't want to eat up any more time just kind of aimlessly searching through it for you here. Oh, but so you do have, again, just read through this. You'll see what I'm talking about and go watch that video. But again, just looking at more ways that the 135 fits in with the 515 coding, fitting in with all of these other really troubling concepts. So again, keep those dates in mind, and just kind of as a bonus, right, thinking back to the album here for Amputexture, seeing some of these songs, Tetragrammaton being track number 2 there, and thinking back to the end of this last video here, in which we were talking about the Tetragrammaton, and we're looking at the number 199, just like this. Thinking it's the same as Do What Thou Wilt, Apocalypse, Angel of God, Eye Above the Pyramid. Again, this brings us back to the concepts at the beginning of this video with the idea of the 4 of discs. You also see District of Columbia, all the things there, on and on, right? So really that's all I want to say. Keep a lookout on those dates that I've highlighted, as I feel we might see some very interesting things taking place. We're certainly in a very interesting time. I did see that Trump wants to release the 2 guys that are in charge of the National Nuclear Security Administration without having anybody queued up to take their places. Of course, people for that position have to go through a long vetting process and being approved by the Senate, which would take months. And I'm not sure anyone really understands the implications of what it would mean to not have those people sitting in their seats for any duration of time. So again, so many just weird and bizarre things going on right now. I do really appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos, and please, please be well.